This is Frederick Watts.
This is Jean Watts.
And
this is Love in 60 Seconds.
We have been married for over 20 years.
And in that time, we have learned a few things that we'd like to share with you.
So if you're single, newlyweds, or seasoned in marriage, we think you will enjoy the upcoming program.
Absolutely. And we want you to like, engage, share, and do all of those wonderful things that we do on Instagram, Facebook, and every other social media outlets. Send us DMs. We want to hear from you.
This is
Love in 60 Seconds.
60 seconds. Love in 60. Love in 60 seconds.
Hey everybody, it's Frederick and Jean Watts, and this is Love in 60 Seconds. Actually, it's Frederick. Jean is on her way, coming up real soon. She's coming in. Hello. We welcome you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is Monday, June 14th. We hope that you guys have had a blessed weekend. We've been praying for you. We hope that you're doing well. Excited about the topic tonight, so we want to get into it, and we're going to talk a little bit about relationships. So once again, please like and share this with somebody. If you're following us on Facebook or YouTube, and for our Instagram followers, thank you guys for signing in. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, if you want to interact with us, the best way to do it is on Facebook and YouTube. So we appreciate you guys that are coming in tonight. Go ahead and hit those like buttons and heart buttons on Facebook and YouTube as well. We'll get right into the topic. So thank you guys for tuning in. We had a wonderful weekend, wonderful time. We went out of town, and we want to actually send out a little shout out to Sister Ferguson. Yeah. God bless you, Team Watts. I believe it's your birthday. Happy birthday today. Blessings to you and your family. We hope that you guys are doing well. So this is actually something we want to talk about with couples. So if you have your spouse with you, if you can sit them down while we're live, let's chat together. It's a good topic. We're going to talk a little bit about that first cut and what that means. So as always, let's like and share and hit those hearts, and let's get into it because we won't be long tonight. We got a lot of stuff going on.
And if we don't cover everything tonight,
we'll
come back on next Monday and we'll finish up and go from there. But if you do have your spouse around, tonight is a really, really good night to say, hey, give me a few minutes and let's listen to this together. Or you guys finish doing what you're doing. If the kids are still up or whatever, you just don't have a bunch of extra time right now, you can always go back
and watch it later
and watch this later. So we definitely want to talk about that. We want to talk about that first cut tonight.
So our topic tonight is ouch, that first incision hurts.
Yeah. And
when we're talking about incision, so when you think about that, or that word is usually related to a cut or some type of surgery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're in a relationship or you're within your marriage and there's something that's brooding or something that is not right underneath the surface. And a lot of times, when we have things that go awry, like in our body, or if there's just things that are happening in our body, a lot of times we'll go a long time without addressing the issue. Mm-hmm. Yes, we love you too, Nikki. But a lot of times we won't address the issue. We're just kind of like, okay, leave it as it is and let's not worry about it, and let that thing fester. But when it's time to really have to deal with it, we got to get down to the bottom of the situation. And then we have to go in to have surgery. For example, like when I had my gallbladder removed. Now I lived for years, of course, being pregnant. Women, a lot of times we have issues with our gallbladders after we become pregnant. That baby just does a number on our gallbladder. And so me doing 3 babies, those 3 babies did the number on my gallbladder, and it just was not doing what it was supposed to do. And it was very painful. But for the most part, if you would see me, you wouldn't know that I was in any pain or know what kind of pain at times I would experience. But sometimes it would be excruciating pain that I would experience, with my gallbladder if I ate something or whatever that aggravated it. And my husband would see it because he was close to me. I would be throwing up and I would just be miserable. And after one night, I was in so much pain. I was like, I got to get this. I have to have the surgery. I got to get rid of it. So
and that's how relationships are. Some, especially in marriage, a lot of times, something on the surface or what you may see looking into somebody else's marriage may look fine.
Yeah.
But when you're in the midst of it, or when it affects you personally, you know that there may be something underlying
internal
that needs to be cut out or needs to have surgery.
Needs to be fixed or repaired. So we're gonna kind of, like I said, we're just gonna get right into it and talk about that first cut. And so what do we mean by the first cut? Well, again, we talked about those underlying issues. I know you have your notes there, sweetheart, but talk about those underlying issues. And like I said, when that first incision happens, it is kind of, it depends on the situation. So I know you've had a couple of minor outpatient surgeries, or maybe one outpatient surgery. I have had a couple of surgeries. One was a C-section when I had Jazz. I had a C-section. So that incision, I knew was coming. I knew that cut was coming, even though I wasn't put asleep. So I really, even though they had given me an anesthesia, I still felt it. I felt them cutting me. It was like, oh my God, but it was so much going on. And it was going on so quickly until, I just basically had to endure it. I felt them opening me up with those clamp things. I felt all of that. And it was excruciating, but necessary. It was necessary. And I felt that incision.
Excruciating, but necessary. That's good.
In order to get what was in me, which was Jazz, out.
And so when you put that towards relationships, sometimes when you are dealing with issues, and especially in your relationship, especially in your marriage, sometimes that first cut to deal with the issue is excruciating. Sometimes it's going to hurt. Sometimes it's going to, most of the time, all the time, it's going to be uncomfortable. But it's necessary to get to a resolution or to a solution.
Absolutely. So, you can't just hide the issue forever. So again, that particular situation, sometimes you see that situation coming. You see it there, it's something there, and you just haven't dealt with it yet. So you see it coming. You see this conversation coming. You see this issue being dealt with. You see it coming. But then there's other times when you're blindsided and you don't see it coming. There's a problem, but you don't really see it coming. You don't see the first cut. So that would be more like when I had my gallbladder taken out. They put me to sleep for that. So I didn't feel the cut, but I surely felt the pain afterwards. I felt the pain afterwards, and I knew that I had surgery. I knew that I had been cut, but I didn't see the cut coming.
So there's two types of incisions in your marriage, in your relationship: the ones that you see, and then the ones that you don't see. And you said something really, and I hope I'm not skipping ahead, but you said something that's really important, because why, if you have something that's broken or something that's not working, why do you even have to make the incision in the first place?
Right.
And you said something this morning. You said it's because wounds of the heart heal inside out. Yeah.
And not just wounds of the heart, but wounds, when you have surgery, your doctor will tell you, and my doctor told me, you're going to heal from the inside out. So and it's like a puncture wound. When you're stabbed, that's going to definitely heal from the inside out. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to scab over, but that scab is not even going to be fully complete until what's on the inside is fully healed.
Right.
So like with and sometimes it takes time depending on the level of surgery and the depth of the cut or the size of the cut, because when I had my C-section, I felt that incision spot for like 2 years. I healed. It took me like 2 years. Even the cut was like not good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I could feel it, and it felt crazy every time I would even touch it, just the incision. But it took me like 2 years in order to get totally healed from that.
And then did you have a scar?
I did have a scar. I still have a scar.
So sometimes to deal with the situation, you have to have an incision. Then you have to heal. And then even in the healing, there may be a scar.
Yeah.
And even with the scab that comes over that scar, that's when that blood has dried
Yeah.
and it has covered itself to actually protect the incision or the cut. And a lot of times we pick at that scab, and then it wounds us again, and we have to wait for it to heal. But now when that scab comes back, it doesn't really come back as strong. It comes back more like skin, right?
Yeah.
And so it eventually, over time, that scab or that incision will heal in the way that it's supposed to heal.
Yeah.
But it takes time. But you can't get any type of healing until you get wounded. Or until you not only get one, until you get that cut.
Gotta start that
If
cut.
If not, you're gonna have whatever's festering underneath, and it's gonna continue to destroy everything that you want to be good in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may eventually kill the relationship, because whatever it is, it may eventually be life threatening. Whatever it is, and it may be eventually marriage threatening if you don't get that first incision. And that first incision, it is going to hurt, and it is going to take some time. So, what do we do, and how do we have that hard conversation that causes that first incision? Because we call it an incision or a cut, because sometimes that first conversation about the hard things, or the things that are difficult, or the things that we don't like to talk about or listen to, that is so, it's almost devastating. And we're like, I don't even want to start this conversation. I don't even know how to start this conversation. I don't even know how to say how I'm feeling, really. So what is the first thing that we need to do to, make sure that we start this incision the right way?
You have to manage yourself first.
Absolutely.
And what that means is that you need to, before you have that talk or whatever, you have to consider what you're going to say and how to say it. Because you know what, when we're dealing with love, and I heard this today, like if you love somebody, and that also means to prefer them.
Yeah.
That means that even though they can be the source of your problem,
yes,
true love is preferring them
to
be able to speak to them in the way that Christ designs us to.
Yeah.
And so being able to manage yourself first is probably making sure that you can speak those hard things in a way your partner can hear it.
Yeah. So you want to, like we wrote down, consider what you have to say is probably going to be hard for your partner, your spouse, husband or wife to hear. And then rather than trying to justify your own point of view, because that's mostly what we do. We want to justify our own point of view. We want to justify our feelings, and my feelings. You know what I'm saying? You want to justify how you're feeling. But you want to make sure that whatever this conversation is, and if it might be a painful conversation for your spouse to hear, even if they're a person that's very self-centered, and actually, especially if they're a person that's very self-centered or only thinks of themselves, they're not going to want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? But you got to not be that self-righteous person or that self-justification person and having your own point of view. You got to imagine what it's going to feel like for that person to hear what you got to say.
Like Sean said, put the sugar before the salt.
Put the sugar before the salt. And you might have to put some sugar on afterwards too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you want to definitely do that. You want to keep grounded and know that you don't have to react to everything that they react to, because if you're bringing it to the table, and especially if they're a reactive person, or if they're a person that's quick to pop off, if they're a person that is in their feelings, everybody can't be in their feelings, so somebody has to be the strong one,
right?
So,
and that means sometimes being in a place of empathy, because a lot of times if you're having this conversation or having that hard talk, you're probably justified in having that.
Yeah.
So, but when you're managing yourself, you have to make sure, even though I'm justified and even though I could be in the right, I still need to come in a place of empathy, because if I have empathy towards my spouse, then if they are willing to change, or if they don't know how to, you're going to be able to communicate with them better, because you're coming to them loving. Doesn't mean you're coming weak. It just means that you're coming in a spot that where they can receive the communication that needs to go forward.
Absolutely. And like you said, empathy, you have to have an empathetic approach, but you also want to set the right tone in the beginning. So you want to be like, you don't want to just pop off and be reactive in a situation and then you all talking about something really important. That is never ever going to work. You're not gonna get any results doing that. You're not going to get a result popping off. You're not going to get a result clapping.
Right.
You're not going to get a result going finger wagging. You're not going to get the results that you want because it puts a person on the defensive. You got to come to a place where, nobody's really in a stressful situation. Say, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. Is this a good time? You gotta make it be, and they might be like, well, what is it? You know what I'm saying? And if they don't, they'd be like, hey, if that's not a good time, it's all cool. You know what I'm saying? Or you can talk when you guys are at a peaceful place, you laugh and you're watching a movie or something, you're like, hey, you know what? I wanted to talk about this. And then you can still be respectful and say, hey, is this a good time, or whatever the case is. And then go, and we're going to give you some tools on how to segue into conversations. But you want to, set the tone, because that invitation, if it comes at a time when they're already stressed out about other things, like for example, I lost my passport, so I'm freaking out today, this evening, because I got somewhere to go. I mean, I always got somewhere to go. I just got back from somewhere, but I'm trying to go somewhere else. But that like just irritated me. And then I was talking to my husband on the phone. He's like, hey, are you upset with me? And I'm like, I am so sorry. I'm not upset with you. I'm just frustrated. So I had to make sure that he knew that I wasn't upset with him, and I wasn't taking out the fact that I lost my passport or wherever it is, that I wasn't taking it out on him. So you got to make sure that you're setting the tone. We got to have a good, calm scenario and to begin the conversation in a positive way. You got to start by reassuring your partner on, how much the relationship means to you. You mean the world to me. Our marriage means the world to me. When I found you, it was like, when we got together, it was like, the sun, moon, and stars were all aligned, for me, whatever. Making sure that you not just gassing them up, but that you're building them up, because you have to edify a person and edify yourself.
But it is important. You have to have this conversation. You have to have that incision, because you love the person. You can't let something that's bothering you or disruptive behavior in your relationship or anything, let it go. You can't let it keep repeating and repeating. Even if it's uncomfortable for you, you have to be the one that says, guess what? This conversation is going to cut, but it's on the way, to healing. And it's important. So don't shy away from it just because they may not want to talk. You still have to have that conversation to deal with your issues. Yeah,
you got to make that first incision. You got to make that first cut. The third thing that we want to say, tell the truth without pushing or having your own way. That is hard for some people, because whether we want to own up to it or not, we are all got a little bit of self-righteousness in us. We all got a little bit of, well, I'm right, and this is my point of view, and I know my point of view is right, because you may have a whole list of things of why you're right. Like you may have biblical reasons. Okay, this is, you should be treating me like this because the Bible says you should treat me like this, or you should treat me like this because society says you should treat me like this. You should treat me like this because you said in your stinking vows that you was going to treat me like this. You know what I'm saying? Or this is going to happen. So you got to learn though how to tell the truth. But without pushing and trying to have your own way in the thing. Let the outcome remain open. Remember that a partnership is a commitment to another person. So your marriage is a partnership and a commitment. So you got to kind of chill and kind of going easy, not going hot.
Yeah. And just like your vows and your commitment, you stood up there before all your friends and family, say that you're going to do good, do it for good, bad, better, worse, all those things. So being able to tell the truth is so important, because it's going to, like I said, it's going to make you free, right? It's even if it hurts, which it will, telling the truth is a way to build again, especially like if something has to do with deceitfulness, trust issues, or whatever. If you are confronted with your issues and you man up or woman up and say, guess what? This happened. It happened this way. It happened because of this. That is the beginning part to rectifying bad behavior or a bad situation. But if you hem-haw or you lie about it, or even if you're embarrassed, and you avoid it, you're just really delaying that incision, because you're not being truthful. And not being truthful, you can't ever set a foundation to healing.
Yeah. So, and these are just tools again that we're giving you to help you to kind of deal with that, especially if a person is very self-centered. If they're, if it's all about them, they always right. They are a narcissistic person. The world is just revolves around them. If they're that type of person, you do got to let that person have their moment, but you got to have the wisdom enough to still speak your point so that they can hear it. If you, what you give out, a lot of times, if you don't give it out in the right premise, you're definitely not going to be heard. But if you give out something in the right context and in the right premise and with the right spirit, then there's a possibility that God will open it up and you can actually be heard. So try to make sure that you're hearing them, like stay present to what they're saying. So you repeat back to them, repeat back to them what they say. So, they say, well, I love you, but sometimes you get on my nerves because you keep going in my sock drawer and put my socks on. I'm just being silly. But anyways, whatever it is, and you're like, gosh, so it bothers you when I put your socks on. I go in your sock drawer and put your socks on. And I what can we do to fix that part? You know what I'm saying? Should we go out and buy me like 6 pairs of socks? And then I try to really stay with using my own socks, or what's going to work for us?
Yeah. And that goes back for telling the truth, is that you have to stay present, because if you ask for the truth, then you got to be able to swallow what that truth is, and then be able to digest it so that you can deal with it. So if you're not present in what you're saying, what your partner's saying, because you're ready to jump on the topic or jump on your next point or ready to, then you're never going to get to any place where you can get healing. What'll happen is that a cut will keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and then it'll actually miss what it's trying to pull out. Absolutely. And so you have to be able to stay present. You have to be able to, hear the good and bad of whatever that truth may be. Yeah.
And then you got to know too, though, when to kind of back off the situation. Right. You got to, keep reassuring your spouse, male or female. And I know a lot of times we have more females that listen on here, but all of our men seem to listen later. I don't understand that they listen like 1:00 in the morning. I don't know. But anyways, they listen later, but we have a lot of men that listen, trust me. But you got to back off and kind of give them, and keep reassuring them that their feelings, the way that they feel, you're validating the way that they feel, that you are concerned about the way that they feel, that their feelings are important to you. Even if they're acting like a fool, your feelings, your feelings are still important to me. No. Okay. So you're saying that, okay, you're not happy with this, that, or the other. What can we do to help to contribute to your happiness? Because I want you to be happy, because I love you and I want to be happy with you. So what can we do to contribute to the happiness? Because right now it feels like our context, our vibes right now are feeling like we're not happy, and I want to change that.
And that type of open-ended question and open-ended communication requires a response that is genuine. Yeah. It requires a response that has to be thought about. Yeah. And so when you're having these hard conversations, or you're dealing with something where you have to make that first incision, you need to be able to communicate and have those type of conversations to where it's basically open-ended, meaning that you're going to get a response from your spouse that's going to start towards healing.
Absolutely.
And that's very good. That's very well put than just saying, well, you do this, you've been in my sock drawer and I don't like it. Yeah. All right, that's a statement, but there's no resolution to keeping you guys both sane in your sock drawer.
Right. Oh my gosh. So, definitely making sure that you are iterating the fact that you are like committed to the happiness of the relationship. You committed to the process. You committed to both of you. Again, we say all the time, and this is something that God gave me this year and gave us this year, that God doesn't just want you married. He wants you happy. So he doesn't want you to be just married and it's just like, oh, it's a chore and we working at it all the time. There are periods of time in our relationship where we are working at it. But there are periods in that time in our relationship where we just chilling and we vibing and we just enjoying one another and we just having a good time. You know what I'm saying? We're enjoying each other. And you should have many seasons of that. That should be the most of your relationship. That shouldn't be the least of your relationship. So again, you want to make sure that you are expressing that you're committed to the process and you're committed to the happiness of your spouse. And then, you got to know when to reach out for help. Most people do not reach out for help until it's like it's too late almost.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? When they're at the very wit's end, when you start to notice things that aren't quite great, you know, then you gotta like lock it down with your spouse and be like, listen, we need to deal with this right here, because this is about to be a problem. So like with me, with my gallbladder, I just was like, for years, I would be sick and be like, oh, it's gonna pass. It's gonna pass. This excruciating pain, this throwing up. If I can just, you know, get like to tomorrow, if I can sleep it off, those gallstones, they're gonna like, you know, they'll stop obstructing the duct and I'll be okay. And it was like I got through it, but I never dealt with it. I never dealt with that gallbladder. I never got that. Well, I did, but at that particular time, I didn't get the incision. And so that's what's happening. And sometimes in our relationships, we say, oh, okay, well, this is a problem, but we don't just kind of skirt over it, skirt over the behavior, or skirt over the fact that we not meeting eye to eye, skirting over the spending, skirting over the looking outside of the marriage, or skirting over whatever it is that you're dealing with. And you're not making that incision to get that thing that is troublesome out of the relationship. And until I got that gallbladder removed, honey, there was times when I least expected it that was trying to take me out. It was horrible. So same thing. You know, you got to be able to deal with the situation and find a counselor, coach, mentor, pastor, whoever, and try to get some mediation and some help.
And then, excuse me. And then like we said, oh yeah, let's have these tough conversations. Let's do all these things and then do this way. Sometimes those tough conversations escalate. You know, sometimes they reach points that you say something you didn't mean to say.
Yeah.
You'll say something that you didn't want to say, or something that was hurtful. And so even knowing how to reach out for help in the situation, knowing that sometimes there needs to be spiritual help. There needs to be help saying, you know what, Lord, help us to resolve this and be respectful to each other, you know, loving to each other, or being able to say, guess what? I'm mad at you right now. Let's take a break. Let's come back and discuss this again, because we're not stopping, but we're not going to let the anger and emotions disrupt the healing process or getting to the bottom of the
Absolutely. Issue. And then another thing that I want to interject into this is, you know, it is a good thing. And this is not even one of my points, but this is just kind of a download for right now, but it's a great thing for your spouse to hear you. It's one thing for you to pray for your spouse, but it is another thing and an even greater thing for your spouse to hear you praying for them. To hear you. And you can do it at a moment, whether it's a moment in intimacy. Prayer is always in order, but you can do it in a moment in intimacy, after intimacy. And intimacy does not necessarily all the time mean sex, but it can be. You know, or it can just be like in the morning or at night. You know, a lot of times I love when my husband prays for me. And like this morning when he prayed over me, I was just like, I didn't want to pray. I just want to just let him pray over me and just bless me and bless my day and bless our children's day. But when I don't know, I mean, how does that feel when you hear me praying for you? You hear what I say.
It's encouraging. It's like connecting. It is inspiring. It helps you refocus.
Yeah.
You know, all those things. So it's, you know, you might find somebody has my back. I can go out in the world and conquer everything, or I can just make it through the day. Or, you know, it inspires you to be like, oh, let me get some of that. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
You know, it's just setting the tone, because the enemy doesn't want you to pray. He doesn't want you to start your day or end your night or however it is together, because if he can separate you, distract you, that's how he works.
Absolutely.
So it's also another foundation or another fence of having a successful relationship, or just having a successful day in your relationship that day, because you set it off the right way. Or you ended it the right way.
Yeah. So, you know, it's okay for your spouse to hear you praying even your desires. So like, you know, if I'm praying for my husband, you know, Father God, in the name of Jesus, Lord, bless my husband, bless his day,
Bless and prosper him on his job. Bless his income, God. Bless him to be the great man that I know that he is. God, I thank you because he's so awesome. And I thank you because he's so strong. I thank you because he leads our home with wisdom. God, you gave him great wisdom, and I thank you for that. God, I thank you, oh God, because we connect. I thank you because we're connecting more, that you showing him, oh God, that he is great in you and that he loves you. And that, God, I thank you because he said Psalms 112 man, and God, that he lends and not borrows. And he's so, he's over, our household and leads it with
Right.
honor and leads it. So as you're praying for him, build him up.
Yeah.
Or as you're praying for her, build her up in that
Yeah.
prayer and let them hear your words. Even
That's
if
gonna
they
make
not.
that make me want to run down and knock down the door.
Exactly. When you speak those things, and I oftentimes refer to this with Miles Monroe, and this one, because it was such a powerful testimony with what he had to this said about this one lady that went to his church, and she the husband was always acting a fool. He would always be out in the streets. He would be down at the bars and stay out all night. And she said, she went to her pastor. She went to Miles Monroe. She was like, I'm getting ready to divorce this man. He is a buster. I don't want to be bothered with him. He stay out in the streets all night, and I'm sick of it. And he said, the pastor said to her, he said, because he's was a great marriage counselor, marriage teacher. So if you have an opportunity to go look him up, just go to listen to some of his teachings. But he said, what did he say? When he comes home, no matter what time it is, thank him for coming home.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? Are you crazy? And he was like, no, just thank him for coming home. And she was like, I don't know about that, Pastor. He was like, just try. Just thank him for coming home whenever he comes. And she began to do it. She began to thank him whenever he would come home. Sometimes he wouldn't come home to the next night, to the next morning. And she would thank him for coming home. Mm-hmm. And she would get up and make him breakfast or get up and make him dinner, whatever it is, and just really treat him well. And it was so crazy because after a certain amount of time, she never had to say anything. She never had to nag him about his behavior. The way she treated him changed the way that he acted. Mm-hmm. He rose to the occasion. Mm-hmm. He rose to the man that she was treating him like. Mm-hmm. She was treating him like a king, so he began to act like one. Mm-hmm. And now it didn't mean she wasn't also praying, and praying over him and praying in quiet and in secret, but she was praying, and he began to rise to the occasion. And of course, when he was testifying, when he said what he said, he's one of my greatest ushers now. The guy was, had given his heart to the Lord, had come and given his heart to the Lord, and was a faithful member of the church. Like there's our light. Mm-hmm. Faithful member of the church. Because of how she treated him and what he rose to, that occasion that he rose to. So you got to speak over your spouse what you want them. You like, I thank you because my wife is the sexiest thing there is. I thank you because she is like, we are so intimate and we're loving and all of that, whatever it is, you speak what it is in prayer, not as a dig, because sometimes we do that too. Don't do that, but do it in sincerity and in love, and watch God do something great in your relationship with that.
Definitely. I want to say one more thing, because you are praying, that's when you get in tune with what God has for you. And so the enemy will not want you to pray. And mm-hmm. whether or not it's together or whether it's separate, the thing about it is that God has something for you. Mm-hmm. And if your marriages are struggling, if your relationships are struggling, there is a promise that God has for you. So first of all, you have to seek that promise. But the thing is that, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. Yeah. And a lot of times God don't need your help doing anything. He created you. He created the universe. He created everything. So if he's giving you a promise that right now, if your spouse is acting crazy, your commitment, your role is to speak those things and bring them back. Right. And bring them back. Yes, you're going to come home. Yes, you are that great person. You're going to do that. You're going to do that, because what's happening is that you're expecting the Isaac. You may have the Ishmael right now, but when you start expecting Isaac to come, because that was the promise, then it's going to come. Your husband is going to come home. Your children are going to be better. They may not be where they are right now, but what we do is that we try to help God, and that's when we get Ishmael. Yeah, and that's when God don't need your help, but what God needs for you is your hope.
And your worship.
And your worship. And that's what he needs, because when he hears that and he sees that, he says, oh, they ready. Here comes the promise. Here comes Isaac. So be encouraged tonight that, when you are in those situations when things aren't working out, just believe. Yeah. Just hope. And have a promise. Now, if he hasn't spoken to you a promise, then that means you need to get up in there and get in his presence and find out what he's saying, because he does have some promises for situations that may not be the best. But I'm trying to tell you tonight is that don't create your own Ishmael. Right. Make sure that you are holding on to that Isaac, because that Isaac is coming.
Absolutely. The promise is coming, and the promise is still good. Our bishop preached that before. The promise is still good. And God's promise for you in your marriage and your relationship, and what it is that you hope and you dream in the marriage that you see, the picture that you see, right now may not be what he said. You know what I'm saying? It may be a worse picture right now, but you got to focus on what it is that you want to see. And you got to focus on saying what you want to see until you see what you've been saying.
That's good. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And you got to continue to focus on that and sow into that and buy into it. You know what I'm saying? It's easy to be angry. It's easy to be bitter. It's easy to be resentful, because sometimes when the person that's closest to you is acting like a behind, now I said it, they acting a fool, then you want to punch them in the throat and be like, forget you and I'm out of here, or forget you and you get out of here. But my mom used to say something: don't ask nobody to leave unless you're 100% sure that you want them to go. And don't ask nobody no questions unless you're 100% sure you want the answer. Right. So, but in marriage, you want the answer, whether it's a hard answer or it's an easy answer. You want that answer. Now, I know a lot of times, and we're getting down to the bottom of this, but a lot of times we have those conversations with our spouse when we try to do that first incision or whatever. We're like, what's wrong? And what's the first thing that normally people say?
Yeah, nothing.
And that's the farthest thing from the truth. Right. You smiling for the family pictures. You smiling, you going on trips and things and high-fiving each other and getting on the rides at Six Flags or whatever together. But you want to choke that person and you not feeling them. You're not feeling them at all. That should not be. We should not go over those types of things. We should not just, go past that. Now, I'm not saying that you can't just work through it, but you should have a time where that type of feeling and that type of relationship or relating should be dealt with. Because if it isn't dealt with, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And you can't just like, well, I ain't gonna say nothing because I want to make matters worse. Well, it's going to get worse on its own. You ain't got to do nothing. But if you do something, if you make some kind of effort, then it can get better. And you gotta be able to get a place where you want to fully connect with your spouse. You got to be honest, and then if there's things that you want to say, you got to find a time. You got to say it.
And then even in your evaluation of your relationship, you should be thinking, is my relationship, is my marriage a safe place? Can I speak freely without retribution? Yeah. Can I speak freely without condemnation? And if you if not, then one thing to have a safe, or to be able to not be condemned, is be, you might have to change the atmosphere. Yeah. A lot of times your spouse may not always want to have a conversation because you may unknowingly or knowingly look at them crazy.
Yep. Watch your face.
Yep. You may unknowingly or knowingly say a snapback every time they say something. Yeah. And so it could be you setting the wrong tone so that there isn't a communication, that there isn't a possibility to communicate. So you have to, be able to set a foundation or an atmosphere to where you can have these hard topics or these hard discussions to make that incision to get better.
Absolutely. You gotta create the space where you got to be like, listen, this is what it is. We married. This is what it is, and we gonna stay married. At least that's what we say. You stuck with me, whether you like me or not. I don't care if you don't like me. You're still stuck with me because I ain't going nowhere, and I ain't letting you go nowhere because I still got to sign in order for you to go. So there you go. So it's all good. We in this thing together. You know what I'm saying? And that, because we have that commitment, we are willing to make sure that we work through things. How can you feel safe enough to share sometimes the really tricky issues, and what boundaries need to be established for that conversation? Well, you do have to set certain boundaries to not push too hard. Not push too hard if you are sensing that your spouse is not open to certain conversations or certain lines of conversation. But if you're asking them about, if it's about infidelity, if you're asking them about, certain things about finances or other kind of secret things, or if you ask them about, maybe they're hiding something in their health from you, you got to have those conversations. Or especially if it's like mental health, are you going through depression, or are you, how are you feeling? You know what I'm saying? You need to have these conversations and make sure that they know that you're not going to pop off when they want to have a conversation with you. That's what we're talking about when we're saying that, having a place where it's a safe place to be able to discuss things. Like, I'm just going to pour out my heart. This is what it is. But nobody wants to hear somebody that's always and wagging their finger, or you this, that, and the other, or accusatory and just, mean, or they have a mean response, or they and nobody wants to be nice and then somebody's responding back to them crazy.
And nobody wants to always, like you said, we're talking about that incision, that first cut. But if you are always cutting on your spouse every single time, what's going to happen? They're going to have so many scars, or even something that when you think about what a bruise is, a lot of times if you have an environment where you have bruised your spouse, it may be tender, and sometimes that bruise has to heal from the inside out.
Absolutely.
So sometimes you have to either be cognitive to know that this person is acting this way because of this, because of a bruise, because of an incision. So you have to figure out, well, how do we get to the healing? Or does this need an incision? This may just need an ice patch, because it's just a bruise, but it doesn't need a cut right now.
Absolutely.
And so there's so many ways just on how this topic can turn out. Just understanding what your spouse needs is so important.
Absolutely. And it takes discernment to do that, and it takes prayer to be able to do that, to know what is necessary in the moment, because sometimes we just don't know. We don't know how we feeling. We don't know how, like, it make me feel some type of way. I don't even know what type of way, but this making me feel some type of way, make me feel like something. And I can't even put my finger on what your behavior is making me feel like. And even when you're like that, when we don't even know how we feel like ourselves, it is important for us to share how we feel. And I told my husband this several years ago, like, I don't care what's going on. I'm gonna let you know how I feel. I'm not gonna, because there was many years that I did keep it in and I didn't share how I felt. I didn't want to cause confrontation. I didn't want to, so I didn't say how I felt. But I said, oh, no, that's not her. That girl, she died. This girl lives now. And I'm going to tell you how I feel. This is what it is. So there are ways that you can kind of start conversations. And the biggest thing that I want to say as we get down to these statements, because then we're getting ready to wrap it up. But the biggest thing that I would say is when you go for that first incision, that first cut, because it's going to be a cut, that you don't present it in a way of blame. Even, this is going to flip your wig now, even if that person is blatantly wrong. Because first of all, if they wrong and you caught them in a lie or something, they ain't gonna do nothing but lie again. Okay, because if they're a lie, in a season of lying, not saying that they're a liar, but if they're in a season of lying, they're gonna lie. Okay, so that's not gonna be helpful. So don't blame and don't point the finger. So when you start it off, don't do that. I'm pointing the finger. Put it down. So don't blame, don't point the finger, and don't wag the finger. So so we're gonna give you a few ways to kind of talk to start that relationship, or start that conversation, I should say, and kind of use these prompts, because they're gentle ways to have a conversation. Instead of saying, well, what's wrong with you? And you already know that you offended your spouse. Or your spouse leaves the room or leaves your presence or walks off and don't say nothing to you. And you don't go and say nothing to, that you're the reason that they did that. You're the reason they walked off. And so you're going to be special and not say nothing and act, I'm the big person. I'm not going to say nothing. And your spouse is hurt. You know your spouse is upset, and you know it was your behavior that made them act that way. But you're going to be stubborn and not humble yourself.
Like somebody sent me a video of being petty when your spouse doesn't want to talk to you, and you do more stuff to put more fuel on the fire.
Exactly.
Going open drawers that you know bothers them, or
doing other stuff that bothers them.
Keep the toilet seat up or down, or whatever,
right.
because that's just being petty. And what even though that was funny, my reply was, man, that just you added fuel to the fire, because you're never going to get a resolution to your incision.
Yeah.
So just a few things that and we're not going to keep long. Those of you guys that are on Instagram might want to come over to Facebook or YouTube, because our hour is almost up, but we do appreciate you guys hitting us and liking us, and coming back to you guys here on Facebook and YouTube. We'll put up a few things that should help you have a conversation and be able to get through those areas. Because one thing is that we've learned is that you do need to have some incisions. You do need to talk about it. And then the way, like even with my wife, the way that she has addressed certain conversations, because she know my response may be fine or okay or whatever. I always like how we have learned to have the conversations to where you can pull out the answers that you need to even start it.
Open-ended questions, not like, how was your day? Fine. What was the best part of your day? That's a question that has to be answered. You know what I'm saying? What do you like the most about me?
Yeah. Sometimes you hate me. Oh, God, here we go.
Oh, my God, let me think about it.
Right. But it actually, works in the end.
It does. And sometimes, people still be petty and give you a dumb answer. Ask the question again. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to have patience if you're going to be married to anyone. You know what I'm saying? Seriously, you just got to be patient. But one of the ways that you can do, and we can kind of go over these little points here.
One or two.
Oh, we got to do more than one or two, babe. So, like you can say, I'm sorry that I have blah, 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 whatever it is. Or this is one of my favorites though, right here is, I feel very loved when you do this. And when you say, I feel like you really love me when you do this, that helps that person to change their behavior, because it helps that person to understand you and what makes you tick, and gives you more of what you're desiring in the relationship, because sometimes we just don't really know. We don't really know, and we change. So within seasons, one thing may be working in one season, but that may not work in another season. So you got to continually have these conversations and these lead-ins. I have made the choice to blank, and I see how that has brought blank. You know what I'm saying? I made a choice to, burn the grits, and I see how that has made me irritated in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever.
I don't like it when you say this or that, being specific, not just because a lot of times, sometimes poor communication is beating around the bush.
Yeah.
Oh, what I'm not a mind reader. And for men, sometimes, I don't know if we're lazy or we're just, sometimes I need you to tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah.
That way I don't leave it up to my own interpretation. If you tell me how you feel or what has offended you, what makes you happy, then I know. Yeah. And it makes me easier if I am making bad decisions or mistakes. It makes it easier for me to correct myself. Yeah. When you're being honest and truthful and direct.
Absolutely. Honestly. So again, I'm just giving a few more, and then we'll, like you said, he may type them in and post them later, but these are good lead-ins. It hurts me when you blank. I feel like we've drifted apart because, I don't like it when you say so-and-so. When blank happened, I felt blank, and it led me to slap you. And I'm sorry. Gosh, don't put your hands on nobody. Now keep your hands to yourself. I feel disrespected when blank. Okay. I'm worried about our relationship because whatever, when we seem distant, or we can't connect, or you seem mean to me. I really want you to try to, whatever it is, to love me, or try to be tender towards me, or try to be honest with me, or try to trust me that if you've made a mistake, that you know that I'm going to forgive you. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm going to try to forgive you. Those types of things. I would like it if we could blank more. Fill in the blank. I love it when you, whatever it is that you love it.
Call me Big Pop.
I love it when you call me Big Pop. I feel sad in our marriage today because blah blah blah. So all those type of things you definitely want to add these types of things. And like I said, we'll put some other pointers, we'll post some other things as lead-ins to conversations. And then, don't be on the defensive as you're giving these things like, well, I'm a man and I know how to do my stuff, or I'm a woman and I don't got to take no mess off of you. So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on or where we at. That's such a confrontational conversation right there. Lord have mercy, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? That's everybody on the defense. So, we can't be there. We just got to continue to grow and to continue to ask deep questions, because one of the things that I have learned, and from this is, and I'm getting ready to wrap it up, with one couple is like, they just, and then with women that get blindsided, sometimes men too, but women that get blindsided, like, what happened? When did this happen? How did this happen to me? Because you weren't probing, you weren't asking questions, and you weren't paying attention. You got to pay attention. You got to ask questions, and you got to probe and be nosy with your spouse. And I'm not saying just being nosy. You should be able to go through their phone or whatever it is that you want, but you got to make sure that, you're really paying attention to your relationship, that you're paying attention to the changes and the ebbs and flows. Nothing stays the same. It doesn't. Yeah.
I said Kevin loves the fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Of course
Fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Absolutely. Because you change in every area, you evolve in every area. And then there's certain things new things that you want to try. There's things that, when we first got married, how we related to one another was one way, and it is definitely different now. We have there's some things have been added to the list. So fill in those blanks with whatever it is that makes you happy.
Yeah, those lead-ins are important, and sometimes just because you are having these conversations doesn't mean that your spouse may be ready. Sometimes they may still be doing the thing that is detrimental to that part of the relationship, or they're not ready, especially like sometimes when men are at fault. They're still at home, but they are embarrassed of what they have been doing or feel shame or whatever, and they're not ready. So they put up that defensive mechanism. And that goes back to, not having your, when you have your Ishmael, wait for your Isaac.
Yeah.
Give them, when you talk to them, like my wife said with the story of love, thank you for coming home. Thank you for being that. Go in your closet and pray and make sure they hear you. Thank you for my husband being that man of God that he's supposed to be, wonderfully made, all those things. It'll take time, but God's promises are true, and it is, and they are yea and amen. That we believe that you can have whatever you say. We are still under an open heaven, and that if you start speaking those things over your spouse, that they will, or over your children, over your family members, whatever it is, that it will come to pass. And you just have to have patience. And like we talked about, having hope is not just believing that it may come to pass or whatever, believing that it's going to be whatever God has said, because a lot of times, and going on just a little, that we will settle. Oh, guess what? Both my feet are broke. God healed my right foot, so now I got a limp. No, God wants you to walk perfectly. So if you're limping right now, still believing that I'm not going to settle for anything that is less than what God promised for.
Absolutely.
And that's in my relationship. That's for my kids, my children, or my spouse, my job, my ministry, everything. Believing that I'm not going to settle for half, a little bit, but believe I'm going to have everything, the whole that God promised.
Absolutely. And, we try not to, like, all the time, like I said, be super churchy or deep or spiritual, but, God is Christ in the center, certainly is the winning factor. It's the winning factor. It's your win. And everything about your marriage and relationship, like, somebody said, oh, well, you don't want to, hear, James Fortune, in your bedroom. Most of the time, no. Sometimes it's okay. You know what I'm saying? But you want to have that team spirit so that you can build. But if you're fighting one another, you'll never be able to build anything. But once you come together and you are solid together and you're building together, there are so many things that you can accomplish when you're doing things together. But if you're working separately and you're working against one another, and your husband is your rival, or your wife is your rival, or your nemesis even,
Right.
that's a problem. And that's a problem that needs to be dealt with, because y'all stood up there. Did nobody hold a gun to your head and say, we gonna do this, and we love this person, and to death do us part, and we gonna love, honor, and protect, and obey, and cherish, and all of these other things, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. You might be at the worst right now, but you said you was in it to win it. So you're gonna have to take the worst and make it better, and work on making it better. So remind your spouse, whether they're watching or not, you said for better or for worse. Now, if like I tell my husband all the time, now we gonna stick with this thing. I don't care if you don't like me, but he likes me. He likes me a lot.
All right, preachers.
But
LaShawn, how can two walk together unless they agree?
absolutely. How
That's
can they walk together unless they be agreed? And then but sometimes you got to wait on the agreement. So one got to stand in the gap and between the porch and the altar, and you got to stand in that gap until that person comes up to the place where God wants them to be. And the believing wife or the believing husband sanctifies the unbelieving wife or the unbelieving husband. So whether or not they're believer or not, and a lot of times they'll be like, well, my spouse is saved, or my spouse goes to church, but they still may not be a believer. That's the difference, because they go to church. Being a believer means believing God's word as it is and doing God's word as he says. That's what's being a believer. And until they believe, you sanctify that spouse. And you show kindness, you show meekness, you show temperance, you show long suffering, all of those things. As long as it's not a physically abusive situation, or a situation that's just unbearable, then and if it is, then get some intervention and get some help. But if it's not, work actively together to make your love great and to make it fun and happy and last, and that you can laugh, and that it's you against the world. Like the shirt says, Detroit against everybody. It should be like the Watts against everybody. It should be the Fergusons against everybody. Not that we're against anybody, but you know what I'm saying? That it's your team, and you can take on the world, and especially take on the enemy. But you can take on poverty. You can take on infidelity. You can take on failures. You can take on meanness. You can take on, a person having issues growing up. It is God that can wash away all of that stuff. But it's got sometimes it takes one standing in the gap. Yep, because marriage is not always, it's not 50-50, it's 100-100, and sometimes it's 100 and 0. That person is giving you 0, and you still hitting 100.
That's true. Well,
yeah.
We appreciate you guys tuning in tonight, and as always, thank you guys on YouTube. On Instagram tuning in. We're getting our Instagram presence back up, but we appreciate you guys following us on Instagram at Wattsup Entertainment, Facebook at Wattsup Entertainment, and YouTube at Wattsup Video. So if you know somebody that might appreciate this or might want to join us, please like and share. We see that you guys do that. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We hope that this has been a blessed topic and some, real down to earth talk. Yeah. And that's what we try to do. So we will see you guys, next week. And and we have a couples bike ride that's coming up. So we want you it'll be coming up in July. We'll let you know when that's going to actually be. So we're going to be doing a couple stroll or roll or whatever somewhere. We'll figure it out. We're working on it somewhere here in the Detroit area. So we want you guys to, if you do have bikes, get your bikes out so you can come ride with us. We love 60 seconds ride. We're going to do some couple stuff. So we love you guys too, and we appreciate you guys engaging with us. Thank you so much. It's definitely encouraging to see all the hearts and the likes and the comments. So we will see you guys next week, 9:00 Eastern time. Tell a friend, and we'll see you guys. It's been Frederick and Gene Watts, and this is 11:60 seconds.
I'm praying that I find my passport because I lost it. Or I just go get another one, but I'd rather just y'all pray. Yeah. Amen. All right, take care. Love you guys. Bye-bye. Good night.
Well, guys, we have to wrap it up this evening. We really hope that you've enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, this conversation has been amazing, and we want you to tune in again next time so that we can discuss more of these amazing topics and these topics of interest. Then don't forget to DM us, contact us, reach out to us, and we will definitely respond back.
If this has been Love in 60 Seconds, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, good night, everybody.
60 love